A very warm welcome to all of you joining us for our Sisterhood Lounge Room conversation. We are excited to have you join us. We're excited about the topic tonight. My name is Julie, and this month Nicola asked me if I would host the conversation. And the conversation, the topic is around Christian women in leadership and what that can look like in our lives. And tonight I am absolutely thrilled because I have three incredibly inspiring women sitting on the sofa with me. They're from three different, one of our locations around the UK. And, I've been part of our church for 26 years, and I'm always inspired and to see the level of women, the godly leadership, the way God is using women all over the UK and within our church. So to start off, I want to make some introductions. Let me introduce you to some of our friends tonight. So first of all, we have the lovely Emma Tanner. Hello.
Hello.
And now Emma, you are the founder and the CEO of the Princess Project.
That's right.
Yes, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that in a moment. But you live in Kent.
Yes.
With your husband Graham.
That's right.
And two teenage daughters.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Really well.
Praise the Lord.
Teenagers.
Praise the Lord. That's wonderful. And you have been part of our Kent location for
That's
how
right.
long?
We joined Kent in 2017, I think.
2017.
So a few years now.
Amazing, amazing. And you studied at Cambridge and you, as a veterinary surgeon.
That's
and
right.
you practiced for 13 years?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
And you kind of traded that to do mums and babies.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. No more pets, apart from the ones I have at home.
But you did say that you're still the mad cat woman.
Yes. Well, that's my life goal, really.
Your life.
To be a mad cat lady. I've only got one at the moment, but we're getting a new kitten next week. So, we're gradually building up
the family.
Yeah, the family.
The cat family.
The cat family.
What kind of cat are you getting?
It's a little domestic short hair, little black ball of fluff.
Beautiful. And I was introduced to you by Pete, the location pastor in Kent, and he just said how much you have inspired him and Natasha. And truly, hearing your story, we had you in the Women in Leadership. You are an inspiration. You are a gift to our house, and thank you so much for being here, Emma.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And then we have Rose. Now, Rose is a longtime friend of mine. We've known each other, Rose, for, I want to say 12 years?
No, 15 or 16, because Malika is now...
Oh, my Lord. We lose track of times. We talk in decades. This happens. But Rose, you are the publishing director for nonfiction for HarperCollins.
Correct.
Publishing.
Yes.
Yeah. And you also are a author in your own right.
Correct.
And you write just this absolutely heart-pounding, head-turning, maze type, twists and turns, adventure action type novels. I remember reading one of the books in the Decryptor series and just thinking, I don't understand how her mind can work like this. It's a marvel how your mind works like this. So you love writing.
I do.
And when you're not writing, you spend your time researching. You say you love geeking out on different kinds of gadgets.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or reading or scrutinizing the Magna Carta.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Or interviewing like ex-military or Secret Service agent people.
They seem to find me. Yes, I do.
This is an amazing life. An amazing life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But Rose, more than that, you are a church girl.
Yes.
You've been part of our church now for all these years, I think, the 15 years that I've known you.
Yeah.
I've loved you and I've admired you and I've seen your journey,
oh, yes,
which is an incredible journey, and I'm excited to have you here because I know you're going to inspire the women.
Thank you very much.
And then last but not least, the much loved and very well known Mary, because Mary, you're our Southeast location pastor. Yeah. You've been on the Sisterhood Lounge Room conversations before. But a little bit about you, in case people didn't know, you were born in Lagos, Nigeria. Mm-hmm. You moved here when you were 11 years old, roughly. Mm-hmm. You have been part of church for about 11 years.
Yep.
Yes. Been on staff for 6.
Yes.
Initially, like doing the events in O2, like whipping the O2 and Wembley, etc. Yeah, and then in the last 2 years, actually taking on our Southeast congregation and pastoring them. That is a really massive move.
Yeah.
And God was all over that. And I know that we want to hear more about that story. Yeah. But what we're going to do tonight, ladies, in part one, there's going to be 2 parts. In part one, what I would really love the women to do, and I've asked them to do, is to share their stories. The God call, their obedience, saying yes when it's scary, their reliance on God and what that looked like. And their stories are layered just with incredible gold. And I know you'll be inspired by that. And then in part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some leadership revelations, leadership lessons that they learnt, some of the pain lessons maybe that they've learnt, so we don't have to relearn them. And we can learn from big sisters along the way. And I know that's going to inspire you too. What I think you will see tonight is that there's not a God mold when it comes to leadership. We all get to lead and influence towards Christ. I believe one of the most powerful ways that we lead is our personal example. It is not so much what we say to others, but it's who we are. We have 3 women here, and who they are, I deeply, deeply admire. You know, for all of us listening, we don't want to discount ourselves because God knows the plans and the purpose that He has for us. And often when we're most unseen and frustrated, actually we are in preparation because God wastes nothing and His will is to be glorified in all of our lives. So tuck in, grab your cuppa or whatever, your notebook, and let's step right in. And I'm going to start with you, Emma. So if you would talk to us about the Princess Project, you know, veterinary surgeon, studying at Cambridge, and then, you know, starting this project. How did that come about?
Well, the Princess Project, just to give you a bit of background, is a Christian charity that supports disadvantaged mums in our community. We run a number of different services to support them, but really the sort of common denominator is to try and be Jesus' hands and feet to them, and to really help the mums we meet to realise that their identity is as daughters of the King, and that's where the Princess Project name comes from, in that they're princesses because they're God's daughters. And right back when I was just the first little seeds of the Princess Project were starting to be sown, I read a verse in the Message, which is 2 Samuel 22 verse 2, which is, God is bedrock under my feet, the castle in which I live, my rescuing knight. And I just really love that fairy tale language in that sort of paraphrase that hopefully just helps our mums to see that actually in Jesus they have a rescuer who can actually turn their lives around. But how it all came into being, back in the sort of mid-2000s, my husband and I were running an outreach project with our local church at a hostel for young people who'd otherwise be homeless. And we got to know several of the young people down there, and a couple of the girls that we met became pregnant. And actually at the same time, we were starting our own family. And I was so blessed to have a really, really sort of strong support network around me. I had a supportive husband and a family and a church family. I had friends, I had a house, I had a car, you know, all of these privileges. But actually, even with all of that, the transition to becoming a new mum for the first time was difficult sometimes. And it just really struck me the difference between my situation and their situation, with really no support at all. And it just seemed a real unfairness to me, and God really sort of prompted me to do something about it. But the first thing put into place was a befriending service, so basically to train up mums in church to come alongside young mums in need of support and basically sort of stand in the gap for them, help them to access other services that might be there. But yes, just to be that role model, that unconditional support, encourager, listening ear for those young women. Fast forward to now, and you know, I sort of hang up my stethoscope in 2015 to do this full time. And now we're in 6 different locations, with another couple due to come on board this year. So yeah, a lot's been going on.
It's incredible. What did people say when you decided to hang up the stethoscope?
Mixed reactions. A lot of people found it really difficult to understand because it was kind of their dream. You know, a lot of people saw it as like a dream job, and it's a fantastic job, but it wasn't. I always felt like a square peg in a round hole doing that role. And even though some other people did find that quite difficult to understand, that's something I've never regretted for a second.
Yeah, incredible. And how did God lead you in this? What was your growth journey in this?
Well, I mean, at the beginning, I felt totally and utterly ill-equipped to do it at all. I kind of knew that it was what I was meant to be doing.
Anybody feeling the pain?
But I was underconfident. I was shy. The thought of speaking in public absolutely terrified me to the point of like nausea. And I was constantly questioning whether I was actually hearing from God at all, whether it was just something I'd made up in my head. Who was I to think that I could do something about such a massive issue? Like all of those thoughts just sort of kept creeping in. But God was very kind and showed me just one little step at a time, because I know that if right back at the beginning I'd stopped and I had seen where we are now, I would have been too frightened to take that step. I know I would have done. But actually God knew me better than I know myself, and in his kindness literally just showed me one step at a time, which was scary but not overwhelming. So I kind of could just take that little tiny step. And one verse that has really challenged and encouraged me right from the beginning is 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, which says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love and self-discipline." And I really used to be crippled by that spirit of fear and timidity. But one thing I found is that every time we do take a little step towards God and sort of respond to that prompt, you actually see God's faithfulness in action, and then that builds sort of confidence and courage to take the next step, almost like kind of flexing a muscle, I suppose. And so yes, it's just about trust and obedience, I think, more than anything else.
Incredible. And you would have multiple stories to tell. Have you got a story you can share, a recent story that you can share with us?
Well, just last Friday, we had a mum come to our hub for the first time, who was, she'd recently moved to the area. She'd fled domestic violence and had been placed in temporary accommodation. So she didn't know anybody at all. She didn't speak very much English at all. And she was brought to our hub by her early help worker, her support worker. And she brought her young daughter with her, and her daughter loved playing with the other children and the toys, which is a real blessing for that mum. But the support worker told us that what she really needed was a pushchair, a specific pushchair. She couldn't leave her flat really without that. She didn't have one, and that's what she really needed. And as always is the case, we had exactly what she needed. We see this all the time at work. Like it just never ceases to blow my mind that God goes ahead, knows the needs of our mums better than we do, and just provides for them in those moments. So we had this pushchair that we could give her then and there, and that was brilliant. So we gave it to her. She left. That was all great. And then her early help worker came back into the hub, and she said, I really would like to translate for you word for word what she just said to me as we were walking out. And she said, the mum said, "Today God has saved me through these ladies."
Wow. Incredible. If anybody wants to find out more, where would you direct them?
We have a lot of information on our website, which is just princessproject.co.uk.
Princessproject.co.uk.
Look us up there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move. I know. And we're going to keep dropping the gold as we keep going.
I'm not sure I'm supposed to follow.
You need to be your authentic self. Mary Abiola. You have a wonderful story to tell. Why don't you tell us your story? How have you come to be where you are?
Oh, it's a bit of a long story, but so bear with me. So like you mentioned, I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. Born to a middle-class-ish family, and then we moved here. Then we were no longer middle class. So that was fun. And I've never been particularly academic, I would say. I've always kind of struggled when it came to, you know, tests and studying and all that kind of stuff, right from primary school, pretty much to university. And so I've always felt, I think I shared this the last time I was here, I've always felt like I was behind on life. I was never quite where I was supposed to be at the time I was supposed to be there. And I found the events industry when I was about 16, 17, kind of organizing community events and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this feels like something I can do. Mm-hmm. And so kind of tried to pursue that, tried to get into that, stage managed a few gigs here and there. But I didn't get my first paid role in events till I was maybe 27. And by chance, I got asked to cover for someone who had left on our staff quite abruptly. And so they just needed someone to cover the phones and like keep the emails going. And I wasn't working at the time. And so I was like, sure, I can do that. So I was doing that. And while I was doing that, I got offered a junior role in like a junior events role in the events department that we had here at church. And then I just got promoted through that over the next sort of 4 years or so. And like you mentioned, ended up as our event manager, ended up as our venue manager, so liaising with the O2 Arena and the SSC Arena, which was incredible. And I did that till about 2019, and then 2020 hit, and then there was a pandemic. And
Fun.
yeah. And then I didn't really have a role anymore because the thing that was my whole job, we couldn't do anymore. And I held out hope for a long time. I was like, if we get back out into real life by March or May, I could still pull off a colour conference. I could do it. That didn't happen. And so there was really nothing for me to work on. And so I was doing whatever admin roles there were in our church at the time. We were doing hampers, so I helped kind of organise that a little bit behind this and just doing like mini admin things that sort of came up. Our pastor at the time had asked me if I would consider leaving the events department and joining, I guess for lack of a better word, our pastoral and that locations department. And, you know, he was like, we'll transition you out of your role, you know, we'll make it, you know, so that you're not dropping this here and we can, you know, work it out. We can take our time to do it. And I was listening, I was being very attentive, very polite. But in my head, I was like, what is happening right now? What are you asking? You're asking me to leave the thing I've always wanted to do something I never thought about doing. I was freaking out. I was like, I cannot believe this is happening to me right now. And then I went and told my friends and they were like, oh, that's really good. I think we should do it. And I was like, I think I need different friends because they're not giving me the answer that I want to have in this moment. I don't want to do this. When I got asked the question, one of my first thoughts was, God, why are you doing this to me? Why? Why would you do this to me? You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a church in chaos, pretty much. You know, it's 2020 and all sorts of things going on. Why me? You know, pick somebody else. And my second thought was, what will people say when they find out that this is what I do now? Like, if I say yes to this, what will they say? It's easy to explain that you're an event manager. Everybody knows what that, even if you're an event manager for a church, people get what that means. And I was like, what am I supposed to say when I bump into these people that I haven't seen in a very long time? And they ask me what I do. All these scenarios were going through my head. It was very chaotic. But I was praying, I was crying, I was arguing with God. And, you know, it doesn't matter about what I'm thinking or my questions. God's just like, well, it's a yes or no question. Do you want to do it or not? Regardless of what's happening elsewhere. And this doesn't really happen to me very often, but that was what I heard God say. It just was, what I'm just asking you, what do you want to, is it a yes or is it a no? And I remember saying to God, like, I'm not qualified for this. You know, anybody else would be better at this. And there's another occasion of hearing God's voice, and I just felt like God said, I just want you to do your best. And I got a real comfort in that moment, because doing my best is different from Julie doing her best, and it's different from you both doing your best, but we're all doing our best.
Yeah.
It takes away that sort of need for comparison almost, because I can't do what you're doing, but I can do what I'm doing, and I can do that to the best of my ability. I think you can look at people and you can admire things about them, and you can take that on to try and learn from it, but again, you're just doing your version of your best in that moment. I don't know if that answered your question, but there it is. That's my story, kind of not in a nutshell.
And, you know, I think that would give a lot of women courage, hearing a story like that. Like, it's not even on your radar. You've said to me, I'm not an ambitious person. This is not what I was thinking. I remember you saying, God saying to you, just say yes. Just say yes to me. And you did. And, you know, this is your words, saying yes when it's scary. Yeah, these were your words. But this is it. And that requires complete reliance on God. What does that mean for you, complete reliance on God?
Yeah. The thing about being out of your comfort zone is that you really do have to rely on God. And I believe that He likes it that way. He likes it when you rely completely on Him. He gives us these competencies, right? He gives us brains, He gives us skills, you know, He gives us abilities to learn and be taught how to do things. But there is still so much space where God can come in and move and, you know, help us where we need Him to. And that's what I feel like I've been doing, really not just in this, you know, new pastoral role. Even when I took the events job, it was very much like, okay, this is what I've always wanted to do, but help, help me. I don't know. I had to rely on the Holy Spirit, and everything I've learned in 38 years of life has been useful for me in these past 2 years. None of it has been wasted, not the good things, not the bad things.
Brilliant.
Everything helps me in how I do my job and how I relate to people now.
And even last week or the week before, Mary, you were saying, you know, sometimes I have to get up and do something and I've prepared my best, but I don't know if it's adequate, and I get up and I feel like I'm shaking, but the moment I get up, I feel enabled, I feel equipped. It comes, the voice is there, you know, like, so you're just doing it in real time. I was reading in Psalms, you know, in the Passion Translation, God is my mountain of strength. I'm a mountain of strength. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him. He will make your path straight. Proverbs 3. Like, this is the story. Incredible. Incredible. And very inspirational, you know, and I believe that will speak to many women. Many women. Thank you for sharing that. Okie doke, Rose. Friend, Rose. Okay. So, would you share your story of, you know, you were a comms expert, but leading to where you are doing what you're doing today?
Absolutely, and it's really incredible to hear your story, Emma, about changing, career change or shift, and yours as well, Mary, because it's very similar, different but similar in my circumstance. Yes, did the whole thing, went to school, did university, and, you know, graduated with business and economics in Paris, spoke all these languages, and basically was ready for the world. And that's how I got into comms, really. It's about networking, and then I worked for Sony Corporation. I also worked for the Coca-Cola Company, and all these brilliant places. This is all before I moved to London. But as we all know, we all have a London story, don't we? Because that's where sometimes the shift happens. And that was at least my story. So I came to London, I was 8 months pregnant, and with my daughter, and our daughter Malika, who's 15 now, and do not calculate my age, okay? And that's how we met, Julie, isn't it? It was in the family room, and it was a very tough season for me. And reason it was tough, because here was this high flyer girl. She'd done it all. I'd worked in entertainment, film. I'd worked with a lot of movie stars, and, you know, you name it, and music, because that's what Sony does. You know, it's entertainment, it's gadgets, it's fun, life in the fast lane. And then London hits. You're a married woman, and career change. My husband and I came here, and we said, okay, we're going to try this London thing with all these expectations. And then suddenly I'm in a house alone, and really not understanding my identity, not understanding what is this thing called motherhood. I don't I don't know this. I know the corporate stuff, and I know how to do the high-flying stuff.
Yes.
This, I don't know. And it was really hard. And one of the things that, God did was really put me in that place, because then baby number 2 came, our lovely Jaden. They're only 15 months apart. I do not advise it, but it's a lot of fun when they get older. And it was me thinking, I can't do this. I wanted, to start with 1 kid and then go back to work. And in that whole time, and I kid you not, and I do not advise it, I was trying to find a job. I was trying to go back in the fast lane, because that's what I knew. And I was trying to understand, it was just unfamiliar territory. And I hit the road running. I had the CV and I was sending it out, and I was getting all these interviews and just knocking on every door you can imagine in London. And also being headhunted as well, because the CV looked great. And I'd go to these interviews and, everything from BBC, ITV, you name it, these big corporations, American Express, MasterCard, you name it, I was there. They all wanted me in the door. But right at the last minute, God would close that door. You'd go to the interviews, you were the best candidate, but something happened. And this was a pattern. It was a big, big pattern. And it got very demoralizing and very humbling, and very to the point where we always had a roof over our heads, we had food on the table, but it was almost, we had enough. But here I am in this season that I don't understand. I've got wonderful people around me, and I'm going to church. And I remember I'd gone to, I can't remember if it was church or color, but Christine Kane had spoken a lot about what's in your hand, and I remember that very well. But I was going, this is a very strange place. I've got a great CV. Why isn't anyone hiring me? And we need more money. This whole thing. But then I think God stripped me of everything I'd known. And he took me to that point, and I always refer it to as the kitchen sink moment, when you are at that point of breaking and not knowing where to go. But God said just very clearly to me, he said, I have to empty you so I can fill you. Wow. When you don't understand what God's doing, but you're like, I'm going to try. I've tried it my way, maybe we try it your way. Yeah. And I said, I don't know where this is leading. The writing, everybody tries it. People try to, this industry is not as easy as it seems. It's very hard to break into. So I just obeyed. I got out the computer when the kids were asleep. I started writing. I had a story, not really knowing where this is going. And I wrote it, and I said, okay, I'm going to throw myself into publishing, just understanding what it is about. Because if I don't find an agent and I can't publish the story, I'll try maybe to do it myself, and I'll run my own company. I was open to anything, and sure enough, I wrote the story, and I put it out there, and I was very lucky because I was doing Connect Group, as I'd mentioned, and one lady in Connect Group, who's a fabulous friend, funny enough, worked for HarperCollins, but she was in my Connect Group, which was not too, and the company wasn't too far from my house, and she just said, Rose, you really got something here, I've been a marketing director for fiction, go for it. And that gives you, God confidence. Is putting people in your life. And I did it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. The long story short is, while all that was happening, HarperCollins came knocking on my door saying, 2 different stories. I'm doing my writing. They said, we just need someone to just help with, we've got these Good News Bibles, we've got this Bible list. You seem to know sort of the Bible world, and publishing. Can you just come do this project and relaunch the Good News Bible? I was like, sure, I can keep writing and doing what I'm doing, still be mom and all of this and all of that jazz. And yeah, I can do it maybe for 2 days a week. And I did, I went in, but I had not updated my CV because I wasn't looking for a job. I didn't know where God was taking me. So I just sent the CV as I had left it that day of the kitchen sink. And so the job literally, here I'm doing writing, but it was interesting the timing, because God was also this was flying, my writing was flying, and I thought that was the path. But to where God has brought me today, it's really what I think at that time he was trying to teach me is you're a champion of other people's stories and you're a champion of yours. And that's what Go Right means.
Yeah. Yeah, and your story, what is in your hand?
Yes.
Writing, I've got one chapter written, actually turned into this, but more than your #1 selling book on Kindle and many more accomplishments as a published author. Yeah. You have other great accomplishments. Could you just, if you don't mind, just listing off just a few of those?
Well, I did end up working for HarperCollins. I've been there almost 10 years, and I've just been involved in a lot of amazing projects. So obviously that first job when I have been a publisher for a lot of great orators out there, everything from a publisher or help publish those books in our market.
Yeah.
Beyond the Bibles, I've also published and worked with authors like the Archbishop of Canterbury. I published his Christmas book. I worked with rapper Governor B. I published his memoir. And I also have worked with, now I'm in nonfiction, commercial nonfiction. I've published Mylene Klass, and she did a book on things that are not taught in school. I've worked with other just really great orators out there. Michael Emmett, who told his story about finding alpha in prisons. Amazing. And took his story out there. Amazing. And so many more. And currently one of the biggest accomplishments, and is during COVID. Obviously, a lot of us had the conversations around after what happened with George Floyd. A lot of those conversations around race, around systemic racism, but the narrative continues. But it was really about us all auditing ourselves in the industry and saying, what are we doing here? But the biggest accomplishment there is I launched during the year of COVID. I forget which lockdown it was, but the HarperCollins Author Academy and Design now, which helps people in terms of navigating publishing and becoming writers in themselves. And we've signed it's a free 6 weeks program, and we equip them to be successful in publishing. I'm really happy to say I've graduated 250 students. About 10 of them have been literary awards, and about 5 of them are now being published by HarperCollins, and they are eye-watering stories. It all comes down to remembering who you are and whose you are, because my story is very much about misplaced identity, and that is really because change will happen, interruption will happen in life, and that's the one constant we will have. But if we remember whose we are, and and who we belong to, and who's, at the end of the day, who's our audience, and if that's God, we have that at the forefront.
Incredible. Well, this is the end of part 1. You would have noticed a thread here. We have ordinary woman and God doing extraordinary things through them. We have Mary, who actually can organize the O2 and Wembley, becoming a pastor, a location pastor. This is no small thing. You're single, you're not the typical mold, all of this kind of thing. Incredible. We have you, Emma, veterinary surgeon, and hanging up your stethoscope, as you have said, and actually loving on mums and children and fulfilling a need there. And then, of course, we have you, Rose, who started as a comms specialist, and now you are, an author and a publisher. And in the next episode, we're going to hear something about Hollywood, which I'm just going to leave you there with that, just something about Hollywood. But God is unconventional, and he knows how we built, and he wants to do marvelous things in all of our lives. So in part 2, we're going to look at some of the leadership lessons. So it's going to be much more, less story, but much more nutty, of some leadership lessons and revelation that these girls have learned along the journey. Thanks for joining. See you back soon.